Welcome to this episode of Lead Different. My name's Dave Oakley, and I wanted to share with you just a few insights from the podcast interviews that Jim Collins has done recently with Brene Brown, Ryan Hawk, and Tim Ferriss. And I'm going to do these in separate episodes. They're all in support of his latest book, Beyond Entrepreneurship 2.0. I just got this, so I haven't read it, and I'll do a review, but what I learned in these podcasts has really got me excited about this. This looks like the culminating work for Collins in this cycle of research, answering the question to study what makes organizations great, from built to last, through how the mighty fall, and now a revision of Beyond Entrepreneurship 1. He's actually done something really, really clever, and as a tribute to Bill Lazier, who is one of his great mentors, this was really a gift of love to honor Bill's legacy. He's actually created this book with different color pages. One color is from the original text, and the new color is from his new findings, where he really has taken and synthesized and created even a map for all the principles that have come out of this body of work. And again, he's going on to answer a whole new great question with his next body of research. And so what I wanted to share with you was in the Brene Brown podcast, I learned several things that I think you'll find interesting. I recommend all of these podcasts, by the way. But with Brene Brown, I learned that first, she was inspired by Good to Great. And in fact, she gives credit to reading that book to her practice, if you would. And you can hear she does a really good job of orienting her listeners to, some concepts and terms that those of us who are Collins fans already know, like the flywheel and the hedgehog. But then you get to hear her during the podcast share the things that she does. She actually actively has been working to apply a number of the practices. I wouldn't say that she's trying to follow a script of Good to Great, if you would, but certainly there are elements that she is using pretty actively. The thing that you pick up in all three of these podcasts that is just really insightful about Collins is how prepared he is. He's as prepared to ask questions of his interviewers as they are to ask him questions about himself. He is Curious George is his mascot for his organization, and that rings true in the way that he has prepared and knows about his interviewers in all the cases that I heard. So I found that really interesting. In this particular podcast, the Brene Brown one, you hear a lot of the description of his process. She dives into that because she's very interested, being a grounded theorist herself. And the thing that I really found that jumped out that isn't in his bodies of work was the idea of trust. And this came out as something that Bill impressed upon him that was sort of counterintuitive to Jim. He talked about a trust wager being part of how Bill operated. And those of you who know my work with Lead Different, we brought in the idea of trust as a foundational element. It's sort of the WD-40 or the fuel of flywheels. Completely believe that. You won't find that explicitly in any of Jim's works. And so to hear him talk about that being something his team says is what they value the most in him, and where that came from with Bill Lazier was really, really, I think, an interesting piece for me to pick up in his insight. And there's other fun things about this podcast that you'll get to hear. She asks him to create, if he had only listened to 5 songs for the rest of his life, what would they be? So you actually get to hear his choices. They're really good ones. They're not the things that I would have written down that I would have thought he'd have. So you get a little bit of personal insight into Jim. I highly recommend it. It's 2 hours. Each of the podcasts that I will share with you are pretty long, But I like to do a daily walk, and I listen to podcasts or audiobooks. I've stopped listening to music on most days. And so fold that in. Most of us don't have commutes anymore, or we do it that way. But I really hope you'll like this. I'm going to include and share a link to the Brene Brown podcast. I think you'll get a lot out of it. And stay tuned. We're going to talk about the other two.